And our scene again this week. Hold on. There we go. Make these just a tad bigger.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Just cover my face. I don't care.
Is that too close to you? There.
That's fine.
Okay. So this week in our scene again, we watched Cherry Falls.
Cherry Falls. I had not seen this since, about the time that it came out, but it was just added to Shudder this week. So if you have Shudder, you are able to watch it. It's still the rated R version. I'm not sure if we're ever gonna see the uncut.
No, like the
version.
directors. Yeah.
Yeah. So this movie came out, like, it was made like 99, 2000. So it does have like that late 90s feel, with like the music and everything. And it was directed by Jeffrey Wright and written by Ken Selden, and the cinematography was done by Anthony B. Richmond. When we rewatched this, like, the cinematography and the editing were things that I like instantly noticed I liked a lot, but the cinematographer has worked on films like Don't Look Now and stuff like that. So
really, yes, one of the standout things about this film is the cinematography. There are really cool, well done shots that you don't expect to see, like almost like artistic shots that you don't expect to see in this kind of a movie. The cast is unexpected, but also like the performances are elevated past what you'd think the film is going to be. There are a couple really awesome scenes between a couple of actors that, like, you don't expect to be so good. Like, they're really giving these performances as much as they can.
Yeah. So Cherry Falls was made, in the late 90s, where we were already being, like, filled, like, with all these different slasher films. Like, we had the Scream series and I Know What You Did Last Summer and other movies like Valentine and just
Trash.
stuff like that. So, what makes Cherry Falls unique is it took this completely different approach where, in most slasher movies, like starting with Friday the 13th, it's the kids that are being stalked and killed are the ones that aren't virgins. And in this movie, it's the virgins that are being killed off, and it's this quiet little town that we find out, like, has this, like, dark history. That, like, there was one moment in time that was really dark, and so now suddenly these virgins are being killed off. But the movie was made for $14 million, and it was never released theatrically because it was submitted to the MPAA. Am I saying that right? MPAA, MPAA,
MPAA.
Whatever. Rating system.
Trash.
It was submitted and rejected, like, several times.
Which, if you watch it now, it's super tame. Like, there's no... Which, in the unedited version, I would like to see, like, the director's cut unedited version, because whatever gore or whatever that they pulled out, it can't be that bad.
Yeah, so we don't, like, the deaths that occur, we don't actually, like, really see much, and then we get some of that cheesy, like slow motion where it's like that, like fragmented slow motion,
like
where
flashbulb.
Yeah, kind of like.
Yeah.
It looks cheesier than regular slow motion, but yeah, a lot of it. There's not actually, like, a lot of killings in this either, and the ones that do take place happen, like, off screen.
There is one cool, like, massacre scene.
Towards
Yeah, at the end, where the killer's just like destroying kids.
But then we don't actually know if any of them like,
died.
Yeah.
But still, it's the idea that the killer's just kind of wading through kids, swinging a knife.
We'll get into that because like the last 20 minutes of this movie are a riot.
The last 20 minutes of this movie are bonkers.
But yeah, so it was never released theatrically. So because the victims are virgins, there is a plot about the high school students planning this big like orgy party, and the director originally wanted everyone to be filmed like naked, and it was shot, but then it had to be cut in order to avoid an X rating, and because they couldn't get it past the rating system, it was just like heavily edited and premiered on TV instead. So at the time it was seen as like the most expensive TV movie ever made, and then it just kind of like disappeared. I honestly don't even remember where I first saw this. Maybe it was on TV, or I don't know if we rented it. Like even though it was never released in theaters, I know there were like VHS tapes of it, and you can find it on DVD, but I don't remember. I just remember seeing it when it first came out and liking the idea of it. It's like, oh, that's kind of like a reversal on the genre, and then it just like completely disappeared. And I even posted yesterday that we were going to be talking about it, and my sister was like, I completely forgot about that movie.
Yeah. There are, because of the way the movie's set up, and one of the downsides to a lot of these late 90s to late 2000 slashers is that the story falls apart. Like, the story is given way by just killing. Even if you don't see it. And that's what made it bad, is because there was no story and there was no gore. So they didn't have either or. This one may not have like the violent killing of other movies, but the story holds together really well.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me more of like the original Halloween, which didn't have any blood or anything in it. It really didn't need all of that. It still would be cool to see it as it was intended to be released, but it just has that like organic feel to it. Like, it takes place in Virginia, and I believe it was actually shot in that area.
Virginia.
Yeah.
Virgin.
See, there's a lot of like punny things that go on in this movie too, but at the time, even the residents, like I believe in Richmond, where they were shooting a lot of it, like they used a school and stuff there, even the local residents were very unhappy because of the nature of the film and like the brutality and stuff. And then it was supposed to be shot within 30 days, and production ended up going over, so then it just made for a very tense set, and everything, it just seemed like everything kept going wrong with it, and they couldn't get the rating that they wanted, and they couldn't get it released. And so I am just like curious to, that's something we'll never know, like how it would have done. But at that time, there were so many slasher movies already being made, but this one just had a slight edge because it was different. And you watch this movie now and you're like, oh, hey, it's Jesse Bradford, or it's that guy. Like, there were so many people in this movie that would go on to do other things. And of course, we have Brittany Murphy and Michael Biehn and Jay Moore.
Jay Moore, one of my favorite stand-up
comedians.
Candy
Clark. Candy Clark plays Brittany Murphy's mom, and she was in the Blob remake from the late 80s. At Close Range.
Was she in At Close Range?
Yeah, she was Christopher Walken's girlfriend.
Oh, okay.
She had the short hair.
Yep.
And she was in The Man Who Fell to Earth with David Bowie. Like, she did a lot of, like, cult-style movies.
So a lot like the career of Michael Biehn.
Yeah.
Like, it seems similar.
Yeah. But yeah, there's, like, a lot of punny stuff. Like, it's kind of a witty script, too.
It's a smart script.
Not, like, as outwardly witty as something like Scream, where it's, like, aware of itself. But just the puns, like, it seems like everything is over-sexualized because of the nature. And then, like, at the library, the statue out front, and it says, like, erected in the year, and then the camera, like, focus in on the word erected, and there's some, like, funny, like, one-liners and stuff like that. The stuff with the teenagers felt real, too, because
teenagers are dumb.
Yeah, and you have Brittany Murphy's best friend has a crush on this kid, and he just seems like a total idiot. And then I think I was even like, why does she like him? And then Matt was like, well, you got to remember, she's a teenager. And then I'm like, oh yeah, if I think about people that I probably liked at that age, I would probably now look back and say, why?
Yeah, like, there's no rhyme or reason to who teenagers find attractive, what they find attractive in other teenagers around them. And there is the big joke on the internet about, oh, my 15-year-old daughter said that she thinks Lucas is cute, and then they just show, like, a picture of a hairless chihuahua. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So their minds aren't developed yet, and so we see this kid. He's got potato chips on his plate, and instead of picking them up, he's, like, leaning over and just licking them off his plate. And she's, like, staring at him dreamily. And Tara was seriously confused. She was like, what is she thinking? And I was like, Tara, you gotta remember, teenagers are idiots. Mm-hmm. Like, and it's just how it is. And this film chose to show teenagers as being as dumb as they actually are, which isn't something most of the time. You watch the Scream series, and all their 30-year-old teenagers, and they're, like, super smart, and they're witty, and they're bouncing off each other, and they know everything. Yeah. And it's like, and then you watch this, and you go, oh yeah, teenagers are stupid. Which also is the point of the story, because teenagers being stupid leads to these bad things happening. Like, the dumb things you do as a teenager can follow you forever. And that's especially now in the age of the internet and social media. Teenagers can do something dumb, and it's never gonna be gone. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna also mention the Coca-Cola product placement. There is so much product placement in this, but then I was like, they should have done Cherry Coke. But yeah, there were also moments, so I mentioned that, parts of it kind of have that Halloween vibe. There's also, like, giallo moments,
you
too.
You just stole that out of my brain.
So there are some good chase sequences in this between, like, Brittany Murphy and the killer. Like, there's the one at school, like, in the science classroom, and then one later in the library. They're very quick. Like, there's not a lot of, like, suspenseful chase sequences, but the ones that they do have are done pretty well. But that scene in the classroom, and the killer has this really long hair, and then they just whisper, virgin. And it reminded me of, like, an Argento movie. Like, in Suspiria, you would just hear a random, like, witch or something like that. Or, like, a killer in, like, Tenebrae or something. You hear them whisper something.
You know what caught my eye? And it struck me immediately, but I didn't want to say it out loud and have you go, So I'd rather have you correct me right here in front of everybody. There are multiple scenes of the killer sharpening their knife, putting on black gloves, Putting black gloves and then sharpening their knives and putting them in order and then rolling them up in a thing. And I was like, man, that really reminds me of Argento films. You always see the killer's black gloves and the knives and everything before, like through the eyes of the killer before they actually kill anybody. And that's something that this movie has a couple times.
Yeah, the sharpening the knives too, always reminds me of like the beginning of A Nightmare on Elm Street, where you get those quick flashes of him, like just his hand like sharpening the knives and stuff. But yeah,
there's one thing that doesn't pay off though. We see that the knives that the killer uses are ballistic knives. Like the killer can press a little button and the thing shoots out. We never see the killer use it.
Yeah,
that's a bummer. I want to know what the director wanted to do with the ballistic knife, with the blade of the knife shooting out, because we never actually see it happen. It's the Chekhov's gun thing, where like if you set up a gun in the first act, in the third act that gun better go off, and we never see it.
Well, that's the thing too. Like, I'd be curious to see the uncut version, because there are parts where it kind of does feel like there are scenes missing.
I agree.
But overall, it's still a very entertaining movie, and you have Brittany Murphy and Michael Biehn giving really good performances in this, maybe even better than a movie like this would deserve. But it's entertaining.
Can we also talk about the killer for a minute? Because and this is something that I did point out. Generally, when you get a slasher movie, the killer is wearing a big old hood or a mask or, like something completely covering their face and shrouding any source of identity. Even Jason has the mask, but he also is wearing these like overalls. He's known for like jumpsuits and overalls. The killer in this is wearing a miniskirt and tights and boots. Oh, thank you.
Oh, hi.
Thank you for coming. The killer in this is wearing like boots and a miniskirt and a halter top, and they have very long hair. And instead of something, that's all that's covering the killer's face. So, in the same sense as like De Palma's Dress to Kill, you make an assumption. You have made up in your mind who this killer is before we know anything about him. And I feel like that's that seems like something that's better than the movie deserves. Like you'd expect just stab killer, but this one you're actually thinking about the killer throughout the film, and that's not something you generally get in a movie like this.
Yeah, there's certain sequences that really stand out to me. Like, so the first time we see Brittany Murphy, she's in a car with her boyfriend, and they're basically breaking up because she won't go all the way with him. And then the next day at school, it seems like a normal school setting. Like, the sun is out. We hear this, like kind of, I don't know if it's electronic music.
It's almost
really
like industrially.
Remember. Yeah. And we see her just walking up the steps, and it seems like a regular day, and then she comes across her one friend, and her friend is like, open your eyes, and then she looks around and she sees like everyone like crying and hugging each other because 2 students were killed the night before. So that was done pretty well.
Which, by the way, this not Macaulay Culkin best friend, he's one of the best parts of the movie. He's the only over-the-top character. He's the only character that's wearing, like, everybody's kind of wearing black muted colors in this.
Yeah.
And he's the only one wearing, like, bright colors and animal print, and he has, like, crazy makeup on his face.
Yeah.
I like that character's there, and it's not done incorrectly. Like, it's,
Or, like, even Brittany Murphy, look at the way she's dressed. Like, the way she's dressed in this movie reminds me a lot of, like, Daria. Like, she has, like, the short skirt and the combat boots, and she looks like she would be a misfit, yet everyone seems to like her.
Yeah, she looks like Fairuza Balk in The Craft.
Yeah.
But, yeah, like you said, it is more true to life. And this goes back to talking about how teenagers are idiots. It's almost more true to life in the sense that in other movies that happen in high schools, when they talk about, like, that clique system, like, those teenagers in those movies seem like they're in different worlds. And in this one, even though it is kind of shown that there are little cliques, they interact like humans, you know?
Yeah, like the big sex party, they're, like, everyone is involved, like, they're looking out for one another, and, so...
If that's what you want to call it.
The movie, it starts out, like, with this pretty serious tone. There are moments that are funny, but then, like, the last 20 minutes just go completely overboard. Like, there's lots of, like, campy moments. It's super entertaining.
But also, okay, are we spoiling this? We're spoiling this.
No, cause
no?
Just because, like, it was just released on streaming again, and most people might not have ever heard of this.
Then I'll keep it vague. There are parts at the end where the killer gives some reaction things that'll make you laugh. Like, knife in hand, turn a corner and go, ah! And it's so fun to watch because it's a killer that they've broken. They are completely mentally broken. They are now just a killing machine. Like that, they're focused on violence. But when you see it, it's the perfect amount of crazy. And it is like you laugh a little bit, and then you go, ooh, like
yeah. Or there's a scene where, like, you have your typical moments at the end of a movie where the killer
explains their whole plan.
No, like, you think the killer is dead, so you get a little bit closer to them, and then they're going to do their final jump. And so that happens, and there's a character, and then someone else takes out the killer, but then it shows the character that the killer was going to go after again, and, like, the hand is
stuck
still
in their hair.
Yeah, it's so funny.
And it's funny because the movie's allowed to be funny without being deconstructive.
Yeah.
It's not deconstructing the horror genre. It's just a horror movie that has comedy elements. And it's done correctly.
Yeah.
Underrated. See again.
Yeah.
Like, big recommend on this one. Holds up.
Yeah, So I don't know, like, I'm pretty sure you can find it on DVD. I don't know if there's any special features or anything like that, and I don't believe the uncut version has ever been released, but you can watch it now on Shudder if you have the Shudder app. It was just released on Shudder
That's
this
where we
week,
watched it.
But yeah, definitely check it out.
Can we? Okay, we didn't talk about the Cruel Intentions characters that are, like, making fun. So there's one guy, there's these two characters, and they come to nothing, but they have a couple of funny moments, and I think they're in there to kind of show not only that teenagers can be assholes, but that they can be completely callous. And there's one guy who is completely detached from the idea that his friends are dying, and he's only interested in how the next person's gonna die. And then there's this girl who is trying to make power plays, like use the killings to make herself more powerful in the world of these kids. And man, like it doesn't go. There's no subplot to them, but whenever they pop up, you're about to hear or see something funny.
It's funny because I don't really remember any of the characters' names, but visually they're played by people that we know now, like DJ Qualls, a few other people, and it's just it's interesting to go back and rewatch this and see who this was one of Jesse Bradford's first
and I couldn't believe
movies,
Jesse Bradford has no lines.
Yeah, he does. He's at the beginning of the movie.
Oh, no, I'm thinking of, the really skinny guy, comedian, with the nose.
DJ Qualls.
Him, yeah, no lines.
He has a few, but he's playing a very, like, shy character, so...
But he's, like, it's just funny to see this guy who now, like, is totally recognizable, but, like, it doesn't have a big part in this movie.
Yeah.
Anyway, loved it. So, Cherry Falls, available on Shudder. Somebody in one of the groups we're in posted that they have a VHS of it, which, how much would that cost now?
Oh, I don't know.
That would be ridiculous.